Shabbat Shalom, ladies and germaphobes, my Hebrews and Shalomi homies. We are in Leviticus 21 this morning. This is the Behave Yourself mini tripod. This is an instruction from the Father through Moshe to the priests, to Aaron and his sons. And 21 is a pretty short chapter, but there's some nuggets in here. So, yeah. We'll get started. I had somebody recently who was like, the slurping. This is my first cup of coffee. It's down to about here. So, yeah. All right. Leviticus 21. And Yahweh said blah, 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 blah. And Yahweh said to Moshe, speak to the priests, the son of Aaron, and say to them, no one is to be defiled for the dead among his people, except for his relatives who are nearest to him, for his mother, and for his father, and for his son, and for his daughter, and his brother, and for his maiden sister, who is near to him, who has had no husband. For her he is defiled. A leader does not defile himself among his people to profane himself. Okay. To the priests, none of y'all defile yourselves, except for this select group of close relatives. WTH, man. What is that? Okay, flip over to Numbers 19:14. Numbers 19:14. This is the Torah when a man dies in a tent. All who come into the tent and all who are in the tent are unclean for 7 days. Okay. Flip back over. When it says defile, what its meaning is for the dead people. You do not defile yourselves for the dead. These are the priests. They can't all be unclean, can they? Somebody's got to remain in service to the Most High. So, what it's saying here, again, super practical if you understand the context around what it's trying to accomplish here. And what it's saying is, look, guys, we don't get defiled, and we'll see later, we don't get all worked up unless it's a certain close group of people around us. So it's an instruction to them to maintain the status of their station, right, so that they can continue to do their jobs. They don't defile themselves, except for this small group of people. Okay. Gosh, coffee. They do not make any bald place on their heads, and they do not shave the corners of their beard, and they do not make a cutting in their flesh. Why would they do any of that? Well, the nations that they are going to displace do all of those things, and so this is yet more instruction to be set apart. They are set apart to their Elohim, and they do not profane the name of their Elohim, for they bring the fire offerings of Yahweh and the bread of their Elohim, and shall be set apart. Now, we've seen elsewhere, was it Leviticus 10, question mark? Yes. Leviticus 10, where Nadab and Abihu Abihu, or whoever, the sons of Aaron, each took his fire holder and put fire in it, and put incense in it, and brought strange fire before Yahweh, which he had not commanded them. And so here we have the bring the fire offerings of Elohim and the bread of Elohim, and shall be set apart. Now, I've done a little bit of research, more research on this Leviticus 10, this strange fire, and actually I was discussing this at Shavuot with my pastor, and his opinion, and I concur, is that they got drunk, right? Because directly after this we have the, in Leviticus 10, we have the instruction about 10:9, do not drink wine or strong drink, you nor your sons with you, when you go into the tent of appointment, lest you die, a law forever throughout your generations. So don't be drunk in service to Yah. But also, my pastor's opinion was, and I think it's logical given the context, that they brought incense that was dedicated to a different lowercase g god, and Yahweh could not handle that. That was a blatant slap in the face, and so he consumed them with fire. Now, there's a lot of parable in that, metaphor in that, but there's the literal too. So here we have a reiteration of, you bring the fire offerings of Yahweh and the bread of their Elohim, and shall be set apart. They do not take a woman who is a whore or a defiled woman, and they do not take a woman put away from her husband, for he is set apart to his Elohim. And you shall set him apart, for he brings the bread of your Elohim. He is set apart to you, for I, Yahweh, setting you apart, am set apart. When the Father ordains these people, excuse me, he makes them holy, set apart, because he is set apart. And when the daughter of any priest profanes herself by whoring, she profanes her father. She is burned with fire. Unfortunate, pretty straightforward. And the high priest among his brothers, on whose head the anointing oil was poured, and who is ordained to wear the garments, does not unbind his head, nor tear his garments, nor come near any dead body, nor defile himself for his father or his mother. Even when your father or mother die, you do not leave the station, the office of high priest. Nor go out of the set-apart place, nor profane the set-apart place of his Elohim, for the sign of dedication of the anointing oil of his Elohim is upon him. I am Yahweh. And let him take a wife in her maidenhood, a widow, or one put away, or a defiled woman, or a whore. These he does not take. But a maiden of his own people he does take as a wife. And he does not profane his offspring among his people, for I am Yahweh who sets him apart. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to Aaron, no man of your offering throughout their generation who has any defect is to draw near to bring the bread of his Elohim. For any man who has a defect is not to draw near, a man blind, or one lame, or disfigured, or deformed, a man who has a broken foot or a broken hand, or is a hunchback, or a dwarf, or a man who has a defect in his eye, or eczema, or a scab, or is a eunuch. No man among the offspring of Aaron the priest who has a defect is to come near to bring the offerings made by fire to Yahweh. He has a defect, he does not come near to bring the bread of his Elohim. He does eat the bread of his Elohim, both the most set apart and the set apart, only he does not go near. So, you can eat the bread, right? We've all got defects. Just don't come near the set apart and the most set apart, the tent of appointment. He does eat the bread of his Elohim, both the most set apart and the set apart. Only he does not go near the veil or approach the slaughter place, because he has a defect, lest he profanes my set apart places, for I am Yahweh who sets them apart. Thus Moshe spoke to Aaron and his sons and to all the children of Israel. There's an AC running over here that I'm going to go turn off. I will BRB. That's the end of 21 anyway. I'm back. All right. Okay. So that was 21, and then we have Leviticus Wa'ikra 22. We have more setting aparts. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to Aaron and his sons. Okay. Continuing in the instruction to the priesthood. Yes. You know what? I could probably remove this lid and be less slurpy. Lid. Try our new product, Lid Be Gone. It's shaped like a hand. I'm not awake yet. Okay. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to Aaron and his sons, that they separate themselves from the set-apart offerings of the children of Israel, and that they do not profane my set-apart name in what they set apart to me. I am Yahweh. Say to them, any man of all your offspring throughout your generations who draws near the set-apart offerings, which the children of Israel set apart to Yahweh, while he has an uncleanness upon him, that being shall be cut off from before me. I am Yahweh. Any man of the offspring of Aaron who is a leper or who has a discharge does not eat the set-apart offerings until he is clean. So there's a lot of foreshadowing here in my mind. If you're unclean, you don't eat the offerings of Yahweh. We're all unclean. Luckily, we have a high priest in the order of Melchizedek. His name is Yeshua Messiah, or Yehosha, or Yehoshua, or Jesus, or you go with what you got. I call him Yeshua. But without the atoning sacrifice of Yeshua, none of us are eating of the offerings. The end. Yeshua tells us no man comes to the Father but through me. Okay. Any man of the offspring of Aaron who is a leper or who has a discharge does not eat the set-apart offerings until he is clean. And whoever touches that, what is rendered unclean by a being, or a man who has had an emission of semen, or a man who touches any swarming creature by which he would be made unclean, or any being by whom he would become unclean, even at any of his uncleanness, that being who has touched it shall be unclean until evening, and does not eat the set-apart offerings. So if you touch something that's unclean, even though you yourself were unclean, guess what? You are now unclean as well, and you're unclean until evening. Take a bath, bro. Does not eat the set-apart offerings, but shall bathe his body in water. take a bath. Make it a nice bubble bath. You get a couple of rubber duckies in there, a glass of Chardonnay, a good book. Yeah. And when the sun goes down, he shall be clean, and afterwards eat the set-apart offerings, because it is his food. This is the priest we're talking about. He does not eat that which dies or is torn by beasts, becoming unclean by it. I am Yahweh. And they shall guard my charge, lest they bear sin for it and die thereby when they profane it. I Yahweh, set them apart. That's a very interesting line right there. I, Yahweh, set them apart, and they shall guard my charge, lest they bear sin for it. Sin is transgression of the law. Okay, so they're going to guard my charge, this thing that I'm telling them to do, lest they transgress the law. I, Yahweh, set them apart. I make them sanctified. So, guard the charge, the ordination that I'm giving you, lest you sin, because I, Yahweh, have set you apart. That's very cool. And no stranger eats the set-apart offering. A sojourner with the priest or a hired servant does not eat the set-apart offering. But when the priest buys a being with his silver, he does eat of it, and one who is born in his house does eat his food. And when a priest's daughter is married to a stranger, she does not eat of the set-apart offering, because she's no longer part of his household. Right? When a priest's daughter is married, she's not part of his household anymore. She's now part of the household of her husband. Which is why when a young woman or an older woman or a woman in general gets married, her father walks her down the aisle and hands her to the groom. That's not just symbolic, it's literal. It's like, on the one hand, you could look at it as, she's your problem now, bro. On the other hand, it's, she now comes under your covering, your protection, your provision, your blessing through the Father. She's part of your household now, not mine. Which is why we should be very good to our daughters, those of us that have them, so that they expect the best from a very good man, and they would have a blessed life. And if our daughters have a man who's not very good, we can either take that man under our wing and train him up in the ways of the Father to be a good man, or dig a hole and hope for a happy accident. So, but either way, the daughter is not part of the household anymore. Not that she's not welcome, she's just no longer the direct responsibility of the father, her earthly father, okay? She becomes the responsibility of her husband, and I don't mean responsibility as if it's a burden to bear. What I mean is that the husband is now the person who provides provision, protection, right? Safety. That's now the part of the husband. And so these offerings were provisions to the priest, which we've discussed. They ate of these things so that they didn't die, because their job was to do this for the nations of Israel, the nation of Israel. So when a priest's daughter is married to a stranger, she does not eat of the set-apart offerings, because she's of a different household now. But when a priest's daughter is a widow or put away, divorced, and has no child, and has returned to her father's house, as in her youth, she does eat of the father's food, but no stranger eats of it. So if something happens and she's back underneath dad's roof, she eats of it. And when a man eats the set-apart offering by mistake, then he shall give a set-apart offering to the priest and add 1/5 to it. And let the priests not profane the set-apart offerings of the children of Israel, which they lift up to Yahweh. They literally lift them up. Do not profane it. Don't grumble about it. Ugh. Leg of goat again. Yeah, you're welcome. Or allow them to bear the crookedness of trespass when they eat their set-apart offerings. For I am Yahweh who sets them apart. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to Aaron and his sons and to all the children of Israel, and say to them, Any man of the house of Israel or the strangers in Israel who brings his offering for any of his vows or for any of his voluntary offerings which they bring to Yahweh as an ascending offering for your acceptance, whatever you bring anybody as an offering within the children of Israel, it's for your acceptance, meaning that if it's not good enough for you, you certainly don't give it to your Creator. For your acceptance is a male, a perfect one from the cattle, from the sheep, or from the goats. Whatever has a defect you do not bring, for it is not acceptable for you. If it's not good enough for you, don't give it to the Father. If it's like you've got, we'll just say you got a field full of sheep up here and one of them has a busted leg, and you're like, well, I guess we'll sacrifice the one with the busted leg to Yah. No. You give him your best, and he in turn gives you his best. You give him your worst, and he in turn gives you his worst. So, yeah. Well, that's a works-based theology, quid pro quo. Hey, man, it's just right here in the Bible, you know. Just because it's uncomfortable doesn't mean it's not true. It is true. It's for our acceptance. If we look down at it in our eyes, how would the Father look upon it as well? And when a man brings a slaughtering of peace offerings to Yahweh to complete a vow or a voluntary offering from a cattle or a sheep, it is to be perfect, to be accepted. Let there be no defect in it. When that means perfect, we have this modern English idea of perfect, meaning it's like the best ever. Perfect without blemish means there's nothing wrong with it. Doesn't have a busted leg, doesn't have pink eye, it doesn't have the runs, it's not, a little, because I have a couple of sheep that are kind of, like, I think you got dropped on your head when you were a baby or something. Right? Not one of those. Those blind or broken or cut or having an ulcer or eczema or scabs you do not bring to Yahweh. This is livestock they're talking about. Nor make an offering by fire of them on the slaughter place to Yahweh. As for a bull or a lamb that has any limb deformed or dwarfed, you do not prepare as a voluntary offering, but for a vow it is not accepted. Do not bring to Yahweh what is bruised or crushed or torn or cut, nor do it in your land. And from a son of a stranger's hand you do not bring any of these as the bread of your Elohim, for their corruption is in them, and defects are in them, and they are not accepted to you. So, if a stranger hands you bread, you don't bring that bread as an offering to Yahweh. That's interesting, because instantly my mind goes to money, because bread is at least semi-understood nomenclature for money. Give me some bread. If a stranger, and from a son of a stranger's hand, you do not bring any of these as the bread of your Elohim, for their corruption is in them, and defects are in them. They are not acceptable to you. Corruption and defects. It just makes me think, because I've heard it said in certain evangelical circles, well, God can use anything. He can, except we're told right here not to do that. I'll have to ponder on that some more. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, When a bull or a sheep or a goat is born, it shall be 7 days with its mother, and from the 8th day and thereafter it is acceptable as an offering made by fire to Yahweh. But do not slay a cow or a sheep and its young on the same day. And when you slaughter a slaughtering of thanksgiving to Yahweh, slaughter it for your acceptance. It is eaten that same day. Leave none of it till morning. I am Yahweh. and you shall guard my commands and do them. I am Yahweh. And do not profane my set-apart name, and I shall be set apart among the children of Israel. I am Yahweh, who sets you apart, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim to be your Elohim. I am Yahweh. Pretty straightforward stuff this week, boys and girls, ladies and germs. Takeaways here. I think having two daughters, one of the things that comes to mind is that when they're under my roof, I'm responsible for them. When they're not under my roof and they are married to somebody else, I am not responsible for them. And I've always kind of had this thought, this understanding, this conviction that there was an elder from our previous church, great guy. His name is Wes. I don't know if he'll ever see this, but if you've ever wondered, Wes, you're a phenomenal human being, and I've really enjoyed knowing you through the years. Wes had many daughters. He always wanted sons. Not that he didn't love his daughters, but he always wanted sons. And we were talking one day at men's group. We had a very good Tuesday night men's group, which is funny. If you're doing just Bible study, you get 6 or maybe 8 guys. If you're doing Bible study with food, you get 36, 38 guys. So one time a month, we'd do, and I think it was random, we'd have barbecue. We had one brother who made awesome barbecue. So we kept everybody guessing. Is there going to be barbecue this time? I don't know. I'm going anyway. And so that's how we got our engagement up. Guerrilla marketing tactics for the father with barbecue. All that being said, Wes one night said, you know, I've always wanted sons. And it occurred to me one day that the Father gave me sons. They're just my sons-in-law. And he treats his sons-in-law so good. I mean, he fathers them. And I always thought that was really beautiful to see a strong, competent, confident man fully bringing his sons-in-law into the fold and treating them as sons and being thankful for them and acknowledging to them how thankful he is for them, that they are his sons. I thought that was really cool. And he takes the time with the conviction and understanding that he is to steward them to be the men that his daughters need to replace him when he's gone. I think that's really cool because that's it's like a king-warrior relationship or like a sage to king relationship. And I just always thought that was really cool. And I intend to model that when my daughters are old enough. But that's one of the things that jumps out to me in this chapter is the concept of when your daughter leaves your home, she's still your daughter, but you're not responsible for her anymore. So you should definitely make sure that she leaves your home to go to a good one. And if it's not good, you should help it be good. And if she has to come back, okay, you're now responsible for her again. And if she's good enough to eat the set-apart offering unto Yahweh, because she came back after a divorce or after a bad breakup or whatever, if she's good enough for that, she's good enough for you, bro. She's good enough for me. If she can eat the Father's offering, she can eat of anything I've got. And so it ought to be treated that way. I think there's also a lot to be said here as far as the overwhelming reinforcement. I mean, we've got the word Yahweh in here just in 22. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. 20 times Yahweh said, I am Yahweh. They lift up to Yahweh, for I am Yahweh, which they bring to Yahweh. I am Yahweh, I am Yahweh, I am Yahweh. Slaughter to Yahweh. Do not bring to Yahweh. Bring to Yahweh. Offerings to Yahweh. We have a lot of authority here in this passage about priests and who are they to be set apart to, and why you don't shave off the sides of your beard, and why you don't do this or do that or do it this way. Remember who you work for is what I get out of these two chapters, 21 and 22, that these priests that have an ordination from the Father, remember who you work for. And he's very explicit. And they shall guard my charge. This is 22:9. And they shall guard my charge, lest they bear sin for it and die thereby. When they profane it, I, Yahweh, set them apart. Lest they bear sin for it and die. Roger that. So, and then I guess 22:31 sums it all up. And you shall guard my commands and do them. I am Yahweh. That's 21 and 22. Short chapters this week. That's okay. That's okay. Shalom, y'all. Blessings.